Okay, so last week we went over why art matters. The whole thing was about, why do we need art in our lives? And there were a number of reasons. We covered it was like it can inspire you, it can make you feel better, um, it can validate your feelings. There were a lot of things that we went over. We looked at a lot of art, and we just kind of talked about how the art could sort of help you in your life. So today we're going to move into a more of a practical approach to art, which is like when I'm standing in front of a work of art, what do I do? There are things to do in front of artworks, and a lot of people, when they're going through museums, they just kind of look at something and go, oh, that's pretty, and then they'll move on to the next thing. But you can pick any like work of art in a museum and just stand in front of it, and once you start doing what we're about to do today, the artwork will come alive. And I promise you, it could be a fork in a design museum, and the thing will come alive. So this whole presentation is about what to do when you're standing in front of a work of art and how to sort of make it come alive. So it's all about describing a work of art, and through that description, magical things happen. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. Okay, so I think I had mentioned to Ben to let you know that we're going to talk a little bit about Feldman's criticism thing. And so these things might look familiar to you, but we're going to sort of put them into practice. And there are a number of different ways to describe a work of art, which you probably already saw when you went through the objective and you saw those different videos. I tried to make it so that there were a number of options for you. So today we're going to do two. We're going to do this Feldman's thing and use these 4 categories, and then we're going to play kind of a game, and depending on the time and how long it takes, we might there's going to be a lot of you're going to be doing a lot of work in this one. So, well, not work, but you're going to be involved. Okay, so there are 4 ways to describe a work of art. First, there's the actual description. You just kind of name things. And then there's a formal analysis. We'll get into this, but basically that just means like understanding the form itself of the work of art. And then it starts to get a little more complicated, because then you bring in yourself into the interpretation. And then the evaluation gets even more complicated, because that requires some context. But we can make it through this. So can you go to the next one, Ben? So we're going to focus on this painting. It's in the New York Museum of Modern Art, and it's called I Saw the Figure 5 in Gold, and it's by Charles Demuth from 1928. So if we're using this Feldman's criticism theory, first we would describe the work, and there are a number of things that you do when you describe the work. So you name what you see, and that is really as plain as it can be. You just start naming things. I see this, 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 this. And then you talk about the materials. This is a painting, so it's made of paint. It's on a canvas. And then you start to discuss the design elements. And all of this you should have already covered in the course, talking about line and color and texture. So let's begin. We have to describe the work. So again, this is just talking about what you see. So I'll name something, and then we'll go through all the people, and everybody just name 1 or 2 things that you see. And if it could not be something that somebody else has seen. So we're trying to get as much as we can. So I'm going to start with the obvious. There's a big orange number 5 sort of right at the foreground of this painting. And that orange number 5 looks like it has shades of orange and maybe like a lighter orange. And the font looks kind of like a fancy font. I wouldn't know the name. I'm not a file, but it looks like it has that sort of little dot at the bottom, and that usually means a fancy font. And then you can see that there are smaller fives behind it. There's like a beige one, and then there's kind of a yellow one. And they also have shades of color in them as well, sort of these shards of color. Okay, so I did the obvious thing. So now it's up to you guys to name other things that I didn't name. So I just want to say, okay, thank you all for doing that. I just want to say that I have looked at this, I've seen this painting in real life. I've spent, a good amount of time in it, and I never noticed the left sort of window thing that has that kind of light coming off. I never saw that before. And I actually never saw that weird, I don't know, axle, pole, whatever is happening. So this is beneficial because it brings your attention to things that you might have overlooked, right? That you might not have seen in the past, and that all of those things inform this work of art. So thank you all for doing that. It was great. Okay, let's go to the next slide, and then we'll see what we're going to do next. Okay, so this is analysis of the form, is a fancy way of saying formal analysis. Basically, we are kind of going to break down what's happening in the painting itself, and this again will help sort of help us understand this painting a little bit more. So does anybody want to address the idea that there might be some repetition or some rhythm to this? Does anybody see that? Who wants to talk about what the focus of this is? Anybody want to do that? Five, yeah. And it's interesting that it's even in the title, right? I mean, it says, I saw the figure 5 in gold. So obviously the focus of this is the number 5. And how do we know that? I mean, the fact that like there's this big thing staring at you, right? There are other ways that we might notice this as well. I mean, if you look at sort of the spatial depth situation, it looks like maybe things are all, careening towards, like everything's kind of, I mean, if you look at the bottom part of this, right, it looks like it's all kind of pointing towards the center, and 5 is coming out of the center. So yes, the 5 is in your face, but also the rest of the painting seems to be emphasizing it. Okay, I think that's great, and I think you actually answered the last thing, which is, the figures and shapes relate to each other because there's this sort of movement between everything, right? In addition, things that we've already said, like these kind of red shapes that are kind of stacked on top of each other, and these 5s going off into the distance. All of this is telling us that there's movement in this, which is important to this painting for sure, because there does seem to be this interplay between angularity and circularity in this painting, right? Like you've got a lot of straight lines, but then you've got these other, like these balls of light maybe, or whatever, the 5s, that all kind of play off of each other. And even within the 5, you've got these straight lines, these kind of shards that go through it. So there is a tension, besides just this sort of spatial tension, there's also this tension between these two conflicting sort of shapes, right? Circles and rectangles, or whatever we're looking at. All right, so now it gets a little bit harder, because now we have to try to figure out what we've named all these things, right? I feel like we spent like at least 12 minutes just naming things. So now it's time to, use the title, use the date, use all of those things that we just discussed, and start to maybe guess what we're looking at. So you know, the first question is what might be happening in the work of art? And I think we touched on it a little bit, but if anybody has any guesses, please guess away. And again, there's no right or wrong answers. Well, actually there is a right answer in this one, but it's not, if you get it wrong, it's not bad because you probably didn't know. So what do you think might be happening in this work of art? Anybody? So what do you think might be happening in this work of art? Well, you know, that Gatsby thing is great, right? Because this is the roaring 20s that this was made in. So, you know, there could be something to that. I think we've discussed 5 is the recognizable theme, and maybe city life. There might be another recognizable theme. I'm going to now ask a few questions, and this is to sort of jog. Maybe we'll get to this. Like maybe there is a way to get to what this is about without sort of me giving you the answer. And so we've decided that this is maybe a city scene, and it's probably at night, right? That's the grayness of it, or maybe it's not at night, but we have these lights shining, and it looks like lights coming through the window, and you've got these really bright red kind of panels. Or whatever these things are, these things that are, and at some point, I guess over by the art thing, you can see that there are kind of lines that are connecting these panels, whatever they are. And then there's that pole axle thing that looks like it might be turning. And so the question I put to you is, if you're in the city and you see something that's bright red and it has a number on it and there's movement, what might you be seeing? Yeah, fire trucks are usually red. Do fire trucks usually have a number on them? All right, so Josh mentioned, did you say Art Nouveau or?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this does, and by mentioning The Great Gatsby, Clara, you kind of put your finger on this kind of roaring 20s appearance. I think that the actual term for the art at that time was Art Deco. Art Nouveau is a little earlier, but you're right that it has this, it appears to maybe fit into a style. And the fact that you all just know that, you know, like without knowing the names of the styles or anything, means it's a really recognizable style. And the identifying factors are the numbers that we've already talked about. That's the number one thing, is that font that really kind of screams Art Deco maybe to us. We know when it was painted, but we don't know why it was painted. Can anybody take a guess? Like this is why it was painted is a big one, but it's also a thing that you do. Like you go, well, why would Charles Demuth take the time to paint all these 5s with this sort of cityscape? Does anyone want to take a stab at why? Okay, all right. So Ben, let's go to the last slide. And this is the evaluation. So now we're going to sort of, we've taken this thing apart as much as we can. We've tried to what it's now we're going to kind of decide, like, is the painter successful? Did the artist sort of do what they wanted to do? How does it work together? Are there parts that are like, yeah, that is a weird thing and it stands out too much? Or does it do anything to you? Do you, like, you know, get dreamy about the 20s or something? Or does it bother you in some way? And what part of it bothers you? And finally, does it tell you anything about, you know, human behavior, how we act in the world? So who wants to address the, how does it look? Does it look professionally done? Does it look like this guy's been painting for a while, or is this his first painting? Are there specific things you can point to and say, like, the way that he painted this makes it look like he's been a painter for a while or something. Yeah. I think you might have answered the second question a little bit, but just to put it out there, does anybody see anything in this that is jarring and they think like it doesn't belong? Let's talk about that Carlo thing. Like, what does it resemble? Like, it looks like, you know, the way it's painted is a little different than how Bill is painted. So how is Carlo painted? What about the construction of the letters though? Are they like solid? I feel like I'm looking at little dots or something. Do you see that?
Yeah. Mm.
So I guess where would in the city would you see a sign with kind of dots like that?
Business district? I don't know.
If you look at the word Carlo, it looks like it's constructed of small circles as opposed to it being solid letters. Do you see that? Or yeah, it looks like the lights of like a Broadway theater. Good. Okay. All right. So now the question is, you know, do you like it, hate it? Are you indifferent to it? We spent a good amount of time looking at this thing. So anybody want to chime in on? That's what I actually said at the beginning when I said, even if you pick an artwork that like you kind of hate, if you stand in front of it and you take it apart, you're probably going to grow to appreciate it. But I also understand that other people might be, can we please move on from this painting? And we will move on from this painting, I promise. So it's eliciting some kind of response to you, and it's a positive response to you. Yeah, good. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, this is the kind of painting that you look at and go, oh yeah, and then you just go to the next thing for sure. How about this? Does it tell you anything significant about human behavior? The construction of it, the things that we've been talking about, that looks like city life, and it's got these jarring colors and these shades of gray. Does anybody take anything from that that tells you about, you know, humanity itself? I like that you're asking why. I mean, I feel like why is the best question when you're looking at a painting. There's 1,000 whys in this. Like, why is Bill halfway covered up? Why is Carlo cut off? You know, why is everything cut off? Why are there these descending fives? There's 1,000 questions to ask in this. Before we go on to the next slide, is anybody like a poetry fan here? Okay, so this, if you were a scholar of poetry, maybe the title would have given this away to you, and all of there's a bunch of clues in here that would have given this away to you. But I just want to say that before we move to the next slide, which will kind of give this away. If you run into a painting that you find in a museum and it really resonates with you, the last step after doing all of this is your own research. You know, Google is real easy to learn about artworks. You can just type in the name of the artwork and then this big Wikipedia page will pop up and it'll tell you all about it. And so there are some people that say that like art is what you make it. Caroline, you gave a great example of this where you said, I can make my own story up. And I think that's a good thing to be able to do, right? Because you're kind of bringing yourself to the painting. But as a painter, I know that like I have the specific ideas in mind when I make a painting. And I think that it's kind of important as a viewer to try to figure out like, what is this artist trying to achieve? You know, in addition to sort of how it affects me. So this isn't part of Feldman's critical theory or anything. It's just what I think is the next inevitable step, which is, okay, well, what the hell is this thing really about? And once you learn this thing, I feel like it brings this whole, it makes the painting make sense and it brings it to life. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide. I talked over myself. Okay, so I went to the Museum of Modern Art website, and you can see here, I'll sort of break it down for you, but basically Charles Demuth was best friends with William Carlos Williams, and he went by the name Bill. And once you learn William Carlos Williams and Bill, you see there's that WCW at the bottom, Bill, Carlos, and there is this. I don't know if you're familiar with William Carlos Williams, but he's kind of a minimalist. He's the one who wrote the poem about the so much depends upon, chickens and a rain barrel or something. There's like a really famous poem about chickens in a red barrel and red in the rain. And then there's the other one about like I ate the plums that you left in the refrigerator. They're all really short poems, but they're like beautiful and they say so much. They're basically like modern haiku. But anyway, he wrote this poem, and the poem is, I'm gonna have to move you guys because I can't read it. Among the rain and lights, I saw the figure 5 in gold on a red fire truck, moving, tense, unheated, to gong clangs, siren howls, and wheels rumbling through the dark city. So you put that poem together with this painting, and then it all sort of comes together. And yes, it might have stepped on the thing that you believed that it was about, but it also sort of, it makes this painting make sense. Then the red 5 coming out at you is like this, the fire truck is speeding past, and the cityscape, it all makes sense, and it's the night, and it's speeding towards something, and even that weird pole starts to make sense. Like maybe those are the sirens, or maybe that's the axle for the truck. So this is separate, and I just want you to know that if you find a painting that you like, I promise you, it'll make it kind of better if you do just a little bit of research on it and find out. Like it always happens for me. And I wish that museums would do this. I wish they would just like, have a thing next to it that goes, this is what this is about, But I also know that there is this other side of the of humanity that wants to sort of bring their own stuff to it. So if you don't ever want to know about a poem or a painting, then you don't have to do this last step. But this, to me, is the sort of magical ending to finding out about a painting. Did anybody guess that it was I guess we did kind of talk about fire trucks, right? At some point. Okay, so that was great. We just basically spent a lot of time looking at a painting that nobody probably will. And next time you go to the New York Museum of Modern Art, you're going to spend some time in front of this painting, I promise you. Okay, so let's go. How do I move this? I'm trying to get